Welcome everyone, I'm Blake from Seelbach.com. This is a Seelbach review, so we do a lot of different reviews on here, and we kind of get all the different products and spirits out there. So today we got a unique one. So this is going to be an Aquavit. This Aquavit is from Long Road Distillers in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So they're up in Michigan, they're craft distiller up there, and we'll get into a little bit what Aquavit is before we get started. So we have their original or their classic Aquavit, which you can see it's a clear spirit, and then we have their old Aquavit, which is a barrel-aged spirit. So it's essentially just their same Aquavit, except for it ages for a year or more, and they're used wheat whiskey barrels. So if you're not familiar with Aquavit, we'll jump into what it is. So kind of think of it as like the Scandinavian version of gin. So very popular in the Nordic regions. Aquavit means water of life. It dates back to the 15th century, and so this real rich history in distilling and in the origins of distillation. And so Aquavit, as we know it today, is a caraway-based spirit. So they have the base spirit, which is similar to a vodka, and then they will either macerate or distill with caraway seed and other botanicals. So like I said, with gin, it would be juniper that we distill with from a base spirit. With Aquavit, it's going to be caraway as well as some other botanicals. So to kind of jump into a little bit about Long Road Distillers, so you'll see more of their products coming available on Seelbach. They have a lot of really interesting things along the line, but they're Aquavit. So they source red. You can kind of see it on the label a little bit, but they source red winter wheat from a local farm near them in Grand Rapids. They distill it similar to a vodka, so they're going to run it through the still twice, get to 190 proof. Once they hit the 190 proof, they proof it down. They let some of the heartier botanicals macerate in the Aquavit, and then or in the spirit, and then they put some of the other, they got some things in there like fresh dill and that kind of thing that it doesn't do well in maceration. So they just put that in a gin basket. So if you're not that familiar with the distillation process, basically the gin basket is part of the column where some of the alcohol vapors are going to come through, pick up some of the essence of the botanical, but not overdo it like a maceration would. So Long Road is using a mix of, and let me see here because I know I'm going to miss something if I do it from memory. So they use caraway, so that you have to have caraway. And then they also use fresh dill, dill seed, cumin, fennel, cinnamon, and star anise. They said it's pretty light on the cinnamon and star anise, so it's interesting to see that different blend. Cinnamon and star anise, and you don't see that in a lot, maybe a couple of gins, but fennel, dill, you get that in some very similar botanical makeups for some gins. So I'm excited to try this one. Like I said, they're going grain to glass, and post coming later on what grain to glass actually means. But they're working with the farmer. They're not just bringing in neutral grain spirit. They're distilling it themselves. There's a lot of work. So it's interesting to see how Aquavit is becoming more and more popular, and it even got a pretty good nod from Fred Minnick at the American Distilling Institute's craft spirit tasting I think it was in 2017 or so. So as being a bourbon and whiskey fan, obviously I look to Fred for a lot of different reviews and that kind of thing, and so to see him talk about the Aquavit was really interesting. So let's get into the spirit. Yeah, so initially you just get a lot of that nose of the botanicals coming out. You get the dill, caraway seed a little bit, but not as much on the nose. There's a sweetness. Some of that wheat is definitely coming through. Just the rounded nose you get from the sweetness of the wheat. It's spicy, man. There's almost that black pepper, but I'm sure that's coming from kind of the cinnamon and star anise. There's some spice on the nose. Really interesting. Hmm. a lot of that dill and cumin, and I feel like I can pick cumin out on just about anything. This is one where I'll tell people with bourbon, kind of raid your pantry, pull out sugar, vanilla, that kind of stuff when you're doing tastings to try to pick out some of that notes. This is a perfect one because you probably have cumin, you probably can find some fennel seed, um, that kind of thing to really pick out the different things that are going on here. But really soft palate. It's 90 proof, so there's some heat there. But man, this would be really perfect in different cocktails. I'm not that good of a bartender or mixologist, whatever you want to call it, so I'm not going to make any cocktail recommendations, but hmm, yeah, just that dill, it's very balanced. It's hard to describe it against anything else because it really is unlike anything else I've ever tried. There's some other aquavits on the market, so if you want to try them out as well, but it's really just has a good botanical, good herbal notes, and overall softness with some sweet that makes it palatable. So you definitely want to throw it in some kind of cocktail. I know the traditional Scandinavian way would be to drink it neat. On the original, you could, but I don't know if I'll be drinking much of it neat. But so really good product. If you're into mixing or just looking for something cool to try, definitely give it a shot. Got a little heavy on my pour that time. We go a little easy on the old Aquavit. So this is the old Aquavit. So like I said, exact same process, except for after distillation, this goes into the used whiskey barrels. So the used wheat whiskey barrels for at least a year. So you'll see not a ton of color. Try to get a good reading on that. It definitely has the straw color to it, which is just a sign that it went into a used barrel. If it was new charred oak, this thing would look much, much darker. So this is also at 90 proof. So let's try out the nose. It's almost like you don't get a lot of the char and kind of the vanilla from the barrel, but it just kind of mellows everything and it just rounds everything out. The dill's not quite as spicy. The black peppery cinnamony notes aren't quite as spicy. The herbal is kind of toned down and everything is just kind of working together and a little more rounded out. Hmm. Yeah, that so more of the vanilla, more caramel on the taste. Very long finish with this. You're still getting a lot of that herbaliness, a lot of the different spices and botanicals on the finish. But it's like somebody just added a little more sweetness to it, added a little more vanilla, a little caramel, and kind of brought it all together. Really, really good. Now this is one where you could probably throw a cube in and an ice cube in and maybe a slice of lime or something and be able to sip that. Um, that's really tasty. Hmm. Yeah, what I love most about this is just these aquavits have a real brightness to them. You don't sometimes when you're tasting a bunch of different stuff, your palate gets fatigued. This is like it brightens it all up. It's like drinking a good cold white wine on a hot day. It livens up the palate a little bit, and that's getting really fancy to say it livens up the palate, but these are really interesting, and it's great to see these craft distillers kind of mixing it up from okay, we're going to put a 3-month-old bourbon out or a rye whiskey. Some of those things I love, but then just to get a product that is really crafted, they start at the farm, they finish, they do everything in house is great to see. So if you get a chance, check out Long Road Distillers. If you're in the Grand Rapids area, definitely stop by their distillery. And if you need a bottle, we have some available on seelbach.com. So thanks for watching the review. Hope you enjoyed it.